Wow, so that was dramatic. Hello, happy witching hour. Merry meet. How are y'all? So this is High Priestess Jamila, and it's late. It's in the witching hour, and I am feeling up, but feeling good at the same time. Wanted to come and talk to y'all about something. Um, and yeah, it's a lot I'm gonna talk about. Some of this information people are not going to want to accept, but it just is what it is. So I wanted to come and talk to you guys about shamanic initiation and spiritual initiation, and how when you start to walk your spiritual path, how spirit will take you through that initiation. It's always good to have a trusted teacher, okay? But spirit does a lot, you know what I mean? They teach you a lot, but it's a certain way that they teach you. And I wanted to, spirit actually wanted me to come and talk to you guys so that y'all would have discernment about what is related to your spiritual or your shamanic initiation versus things that are just meant to do damage to your brain. Okay. So, if you guys didn't know, for like the past several months, that's exactly most of like a bulk of the healing that I've been doing is healing my brain. Like I'm talking about things like the prefrontal cortex, the brain stem, you know what I'm saying? And it's we're at the final stretch of that. So there are certain things that will transpire with your spiritual initiation, especially the shamanic one. Typically, there are certain things that are going to happen that spirit is going to let happen, but they're not going to be dire like that, right? It's not going to be a situation that could potentially lead you to having like a nervous breakdown. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not going to be something like that. In fact, most of the time, it'll be something like, maybe you may forget to pay your light bill and your lights have to get cut off for a day or so. You know what I'm saying? Or but that would be as dire, like, you know what I'm saying? Like it wouldn't get more dire than that. Um and I think it's important for people to understand, especially online when you're dealing with any kind of spiritual situation and people that are claiming that they are spiritual leaders and they are claiming certain things that are not the truth. A spiritual leader is going to look at every problematic person almost as a project or somebody that may need your guidance, right? Depends on how long a person is being problematic. And so basically what will happen is that like folks that are problematic, in particular when it comes to, certain people, there may be teachable moments where you can teach that person, especially if you're in social media and you are discussing the social behaviors of others and you're dealing with other people, when you're dealing with parasocial situations. However, those things are not supposed to be dire and they're not supposed to be abusive. People in the spiritual community have to remember that. And I think that there are some people that they often do way too much and they ultimately end up exposing themselves. When you see certain people that, they're trying to prove that they are the toughest and the baddest, and they're supposed to be a leader, but yet they're not acting like a leader, they're acting like a follower. They are a follower. Okay. And so your shamanic and your spiritual initiation, that's not going to necessarily come from another person. Like if you come to somebody like me, or like in certain spiritual avenues like Ifa, Santeria, things of that nature, then of course, if you are working with somebody that is authentic, there are going to be certain initiations, certain things that are going to happen that are meant to teach you, but these things are not going to necessarily bring you to a point where you believe a situation is going to lead you to a physical death. Like, for example, okay, um, being put in a situation where, you're in a tough environment that could be detrimental to your health. Now, those things have happened. And I believe that during the initiation process, I believe spirits, they clear that up very quickly. They're not going to put you in a situation where you can get sick or die like that. They're not. Now, that leads me to speaking about shamanic, the shamanic illness versus brain damage. Okay, specifically when it comes to brain damage, because if you have dealt with certain situations and certain energies and you've got a lot of spiritual abuse that is happening to you, these things can ultimately lead to damage to a damaged brain. If you're caught up with somebody constantly throwing bad spiritual energy at you, and then let's keep it real, there are some people out there that are purposely trying to do damage to people's brains because they know that that's where all your gifts come from. They know that that's where all of your magical and bodily functions comes from, in the brain. And if they physically damage your brain, if they're able to do that psychologically or physically, then that will ultimately destroy your psychic and your magical abilities. And people are very aware of this. Okay. In fact, some of the real evil ones, this is directly what they will do. That's what they're aiming at. So a lot of people believe that certain energies that's coming from certain people is about teaching you something, when in reality it's not. Okay, so let's talk about the shamans. What I pick up on and what I can see in the past and what the shamans would do. They would take a person out on a nature retreat, and the person would have to survive out in nature, which is what people do for fun. Like, people actually do that for leisure. So it's kind of like you're spoiled a little bit, but they will bring certain things to challenge you while you're on those nature retreats, like certain weather, um, maybe a bear, maybe a coyote, which is why, everybody that is out on any kind of nature retreat should have some kind of gun with them. Seriously. Yeah, I wouldn't do that without being armed, because you never know. You may have to take down a bear. You never know. Okay. Or a boar or one of them buffaloes or something. Okay. Depending on where you at in the world. But, back then, before guns were invented, that could possibly happen. But then again, it's not necessarily a thing to where you're supposed to kill the animal, but more so commune with it. So the shamans back then, when they would go out on these excursions, they would actually connect with this extremely wild, dangerous animal that would ultimately end up not hurting them. And so it would be a test. But it's not meant to scare you. It's what the test is that it's meant for you, for your courage and your gifts and your powers to take over in that moment where your life could be in danger. Those experiences are not meant to damage you. Those experiences are meant to make you stronger. Shamans have been around since the beginning of time. And they were the first humans, pretty much. And before pollution and all of that stuff, I can just about imagine, like, I can see it, how clear the sky was, how clearly you could just probably look up and see the planets. Like, you could probably literally look up and just see them. You could just see the stars, like the constellations, so easily back then, because this was before technology, and it was in before more people. So pre, the early shamans, it was them and it was the animals. And a lot of the confusion, because the shamans were connected with the earth and they were connected with the animals, and with nature. They That was pre-fear, you know, and life was different then than what it is now. And so a lot of people walk around and they try to use fear as a superpower, when the shamans would totally disagree with that concept. But the world is what it is now. And I do believe that all things that happened, if the Most High allowed it, apparently it was supposed to happen. But again, I feel that things are supposed to change. And that's why in the past decade, a lot of people have went back to the old ways, because it's really the only way that the human race is going to survive. It's the only way. And so that's why that's happening. But then in the process of that happening, the learned behaviors throughout the years, and this is like billions of years, like the earth is billions of years old, okay? And so, contrary to what some people believe, yeah, the earth is very old, okay? Probably older than what we could even calculate. So, so going all the way back before there was a lot of confusion is primarily where we're going. So basically what I'm getting up to is that um the way that we look at spiritual leaders these days, it's cultish. It's a cult. We look at cult leaders who primarily direct and delegate their wisdom to their followers on the frequency of fear and control. And that is a problem, because that is what is going to damage the brain. In which, if you damage the brain, you can control a person. You can control a nation of people. You can control a bunch of people just by damaging their brain. And one way that which they do it is abuse, constant and repetitive words of disempowerment. Because when you're a baby and you're born, hell, even when you're in utero, a lot of that damage is not happening until after you're born. You know what I mean? So the damage can be happening throughout childhood while you're growing up. That's why school can be so damaging to people and their minds. That's why it's been scientifically proven that school does more damage to the brain than actually makes you smart. That's a fact that it does. And so is it an agenda? It is. Does that agenda actually and factually have real power? No, it's false power. So when it comes to a lot of you guys that are practicing and you have like what they call a spiritual adversary, please be careful with not paying attention to the possible damage that could be happening to your brain. And so that's why there's a lot of people, they want to reclaim their energy, they want to reclaim their power. But in reality, this is what the shamans understood, is that, and this is the evolution of the shaman. the shaman that has looked at the world and how and the direction that the world, that people in the world is went in. And so a lot of the more modern shamans recognize the brain damage that is happening with a lot of the systems and the social engineering and things of that nature. So you want to be very careful, falling into that trap. And then there's a specific way that us shamans are being directed to heal the brain. So we're dealing with modern shamanism, big time. Okay. Especially, think about it. There was a time when, the Bible, they got the Bible from the Torah, right? And the Torah was not typed, it was handwritten. They typed it up and printed it. So that's modern. That's what modern technology has allowed them to do. Otherwise, the Torah, hey Stefan, happy Sunday. Otherwise, the Torah was like handwritten. It wasn't there, there wasn't always a Bible, like that was printed out like that. You know what I'm saying? It was handwritten and, you know, yeah. So it's the same thing when it comes to shamanism, which I believe that some of I was tripping off of Moses and Deuteronomy over the weekend. And again, this is another Bible figure that I don't agree with because I feel like he was more so leading a cult when I read it. When I read it, all I see cult, 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 control, 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 control these people. Okay. So somebody with a mind like mine is gonna not take to that. I'm like, you know, okay. But Moses is the one that wrote the Gospel of Deuteronomy. And in Deuteronomy, Moses is telling his people to not look up at the sky and not worship, to not worship the planets. And I truly believe that Moses and other people in the Bible that were writing these gospels, I truly believe that they were shamans. They're shamans. But to me, and some of my, like all of my shamanic ancestors, believe that they were bad shamans. And the reason why they were considered to be bad shamans is because they were teaching the people the exact opposite of shamanism in a in a sense to control them. But what that has led us to is what did it lead to? Death and destruction is ultimately what it led to. So I'm not going to stick too much on the subject of the Bible because I'm not trying to be too controversial in this, because there are certain people. I have the right to have my own opinion of things. If you don't agree with me, you don't agree. That doesn't make me the devil or the antichrist. You know what I'm saying? Like it just it makes me someone that has the ability to think and to look at things. And then let's face it, in the Bible, witches were not coveted. We there's a lot of hate for witches. So I'm a witch, I'm a shamanic witch, and shamans were the same way. Shaman, witch, very similar. The only difference is that shamans, it's different, but it's pretty much somewhat very similar. Okay, but very different. Shamans are very different but similar to witches, but they could be compared to a witch. And so When I look at the Bible, it's not very logical. It seems like the feeling that I get as an empath is that it's more based upon emotional and not logical and not spiritual, but more so an emotional thing. So that's, and emotions are very important, but you can't look at the world through how somebody hurt your feelings. If everybody looked at the world that way, we would be in a lot of trouble, which we are in trouble. This world is shit right now. The whole totality of the world that we live in is, it's a living shit. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with y'all. It's garbage right now. What we're looking at in the world is just like disgusting, absolutely fucking deplorable, shameful. The worst time, in one of the worst times in history. So it's not to say that you can't create your own paradise in this world. Many people do. Many people do. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think everybody in the world should suffer because of people that choose to be ignorant. So, anyway, getting back to the discussion about when spirit is initiating you, especially when it comes to shamanism, shamans are very important healers, and they should not be toyed with. They should not be played with and messed with and prodded and poked. Why is that happening? Probably if you're a shaman, it would have something to do with how you grew up. Just think about it. If your parents, if your parents raised you, homeschooled you, kind of taught you, you know what I'm saying, kind of kept you away from most people, think about how different a person's mind and their spirit would be. Because again, a lot of people in this world are literal garbage shit. I'm sorry that, like, most of them I would not want around you. You just, you know what I'm saying? And so there are some shamans that were raised in the perfect environment, and that is because their ancestors did the work to make sure that they were not a part of the rest of the world, which is like the rat race, which is like all of the confused ass people that are just out in this world confused. So anyway, this whole world used to be filled with nature. And I don't mind. I don't too much mind the fact that, trees got cut down so that they could build houses and stuff like that and things of that nature. Bless you. But Instead, what you have with that is you have prisons that they have to fill up. You have police stations that they have to fill up. You have hospitals that have to be filled up. Quotas that have to be met. And so it's a mess. It's a mess. I can't get into everything I want to get into, but so and Mother Earth is really just tolerating it. It wouldn't surprise me if something were to happen to just knock all these damn buildings down and let nature grow where it's supposed to grow. Just because people are so dismissive and apathetic towards nature. There's a lot of people who conserve nature, and I really appreciate those people because, you know, and I totally understand the need for a lot of it and just what has happened. I'm one of those types of people that would just love to live out in the woods, away from society. I am, because I'm way too empathic. You know what I mean? So, but at the, it's not that everybody can do that and everybody even wants to do that, but a problem is how people have been socially engineered and a lot of other things. So a lot of people don't really know, you know. The world is a very, very dangerous place for female shamans. And what a lot of us have found is that, well, when my parents were alive and when they were raising me, I was raised with a sense of security and stability. Um, but a lot of the baby shamans have been shifted around, tossed about, and that's pretty much the way that the world treats us. And but in the midst of that, you have to find that space even while you're being shifted about to connect and to commune with um, the ancestors and what they're giving to you. And it's so hard. It's so hard because there's so many bad energies and spirits floating around, and just people that are so focused on other things that they don't really have the time to sit and think and commune with the ancestors so that they can hear what they're saying, and so that you can listen to nature and really figure out what nature is trying to say to you, because they do communicate with us sometimes through nature. And I know that for a fact because yesterday I was outside burning some herbs, and I was burning them and I was focusing on something. And then all of a sudden a bird just comes out of nowhere and it just starts talking. And I was like, oh, wow. So, that stuff like that happens, and it'll let you know because that's pretty much nature um, speaking back to you. And I regret not recording the song of that bird to see which bird it was, because, you know, it was just still the point that it happened. And it just kind of lets you know. But it just seemed like so many people are disconnected. And people, it's being done on purpose. So it's hard out there and it's hard to discern. So a lot of people may think, oh God, I'm going through this spiritual warfare and it's teaching me something. But being taught something doesn't mean that you shouldn't pay attention to the intention and the damage that's being done. It is not up to anybody else unless you have a spiritual teacher that is authentic. People that are traumatizing, trying to be traumatizing to you, those people are not teaching you anything except for maybe the mechanics and panic. You're panicking and you're trying to defend yourself. That's not how the ancestors teach you. They teach you by getting you out in nature, and then it just goes from there. It's not anything traumatic involved. But a lot of people think, oh, I'm in the school of the hard knocks and I'm learning. But while you're learning, you still, your brain is still being damaged. So now you know all those things. You know what the herb is for. You know what fire is about. You know what what the earth is about, what the air is about, what the water is about, but you can't connect to it to use it because now your brain is damaged because you've been through so much abuse and stress and trauma. So a part of regaining and reclaiming your power is going to be dealing with a non-abusive energies, non-abusive, that know how to heal your mind. And, because otherwise, a person that ignorantly thinks that they're teaching you something through trauma is just ignorant. Like perpetrating the trauma. Oh, this is supposed to be character building. And no, that ain't it. So a lot of y'all that, uh, a lot of the clients and stuff, apprentices, a lot of you guys, what spirit is working on is healing the brain damage that's been done to you from the years and years of abuse and drama and trauma, sexual trauma, physical trauma, even the physical trauma where you've taken blows to the head. But the communication that you're getting at this point, your brain, it may be able to block it out, but at this point, for a lot of you guys, the only reason why your brain is even blocking it out at this point is because there's been so much damage that you think, oh, I've managed to block this stuff out, and I finally, done that. But in reality, your brain is functioning less than 1%, and your spiritual gifts are not sharp at all. In fact, they're very dull because of the damage that has been done to your brain. You know what? The evil, diabolical ones that make the bad decisions, we're glad they don't listen to anybody, because somebody that's going to take their spiritual gifts and use it for evil, I don't want them to, I don't want their gifts to to work. I want them their gifts to not work. I don't want them to heal their minds. I want their minds to decay because what's in their heart is evil and destruction. And it it yeah, it goes against the nature of humans. We can sit up here and say all day, well, you know how the hyenas and stuff, and they be attacking the little baby cubs of the lions and stuff. Yeah, but we're not hyenas and we're not lions. We're humans still at the end of the day. So, when people look at nature and their behavior and they begin to act predatorial towards people, I remind people, hey, you know what? I like that you're making the comparison with nature, but keep in mind that animals walk on four legs, except for maybe kangaroos. Okay. The rest of them walk on four legs facing the ground. We walk with two legs facing the sky, with our head facing the sky, right? So we're different. We can't just always, and I think that again, that's another mistake that people are making. And this is and where they got it from, people with their ideas, and they're just stuck on damn stupid. Human beings, if you are a person, unless you want to make the comparison to us to monkeys and gorillas, which is still, a monkey or a gorilla is not a human being. A monkey or a gorilla is a primate. It's not a human being. So people are so mistaken. They really are. And so they think, well, I'm in my primal instincts, but you're mimicking an animal. Like you're not necessarily. I mean, I do know that back in the day, okay, back in the day, people hunted for their food and things probably was crazy, crazy back then. Like it was probably people that would go out and hunt deer, and they couldn't, it would probably be the only deer, and it would be several families looking for that same deer. And so people probably killed each other over, the deer, like, no, this is my deer, I'm hungry, I want the deer, no, I want the deer, and then somebody ends up dead, you know what I'm saying? So I can imagine that things like that did happen, you know but again, with modern day, with our our modern day age of farming and agriculture and things of that nature is supposed to stop all of that. If you want, well, I mean, if you want some deer meat, you probably have to go to your local farm. But you can go to the grocery store and buy meat and eggs, you know what I'm saying? Bread, milk. You ain't gotta, you know what I'm saying? So it's again, and then people have gotten away from nature because there's some people, they refuse to eat pork. And that's not necessarily a part of nature, because there used to be a time where when people were hunting for animals, if the pig was the only one that was available, what was you going to do? Just starve? I know I wouldn't. I cut that pig open and go to town. For real. Pigs are definitely worthy of being eaten, in my opinion. And so people are picky because of modern stuff. When you think about like early man and early humans, they weren't going around saying, oh, I don't want to eat pork because pork has worms in it or something. You know what I mean? So it's differently different, and people have gotten away from nature. You know what I mean? And then if your ancestors ate pork to survive, it might be a part of your DNA, the consumption of pork. that, may make your, DNA and your mitochondria and all that stuff and the cells stronger in the body. So it's a lot of things that are happening that are, to me, actually doing a lot of harm to people. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, and it's just, it's really weird, and so the trauma that we're dealing with is, for some things it's things that are artificial. It's like things that are implanted and things that, because like here lately, I've been avoiding people, pretty much is what I've been doing. I have been avoiding people that make me feel like I'm dealing with a dead person. If a person's behavior is so weird to where I can't tell if they're among the living or the dead, I pretty much stay the hell away from that person. Because odd, off, goofy behavior to where it's like some kind of la la land or dreamland. It's like, what in the hell is this? Is weird. So that within itself, I know for a fact that I am amongst the living. I'm not dead. My children are not dead. We're all alive. We're all alive. There are people that we can assume that they're alive, but they act almost like dead cartoon characters. It's so weird and it's very traumatic, and it's something to where it's just like, oh, please let me go and just either talk to somebody or look at somebody that is just normal. But then again, when it comes to root work and conjure and witchcraft, you got people out there animating people. They're like reanimators and stuff. You know what I'm saying? So, and that's, to me, that's weird and goofy, because why is this necessary? It shouldn't be necessary. So it's just a lot of that going on. And, I want y'all to throw caution to the wind, and I want y'all to know that that's what we're focusing on. And that, for me, I am one that does actually commune with the ancestors, like, and I take it seriously. So, when I'm sitting there and I'm meditating and I'm actually able to listen to what spirit is saying to me, that is what spirit said to me. Like, it's been so much shitstorm and just trauma and bullshit the past decade or two, that maybe even some of y'all the past 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, that it's important to heal the brain. And, you know, um, I guess how deep the rabbit hole is going for a lot of people is going to depend on if the brain can even be healed or not. But that's pretty much primarily what we're focused on. And we want people, my spirits wanted people to know that, hey, that is not good, because you're damaging your brain. And so a lot of people are wondering, why is this not working, or why is that not working, or why am I feeling, it's because you probably need to heal the brain. And mainly it's going to come from the areas and parts of the brain that work along with your spiritual gifts, the ones that are responsible for your spiritual gifts, which, if you Google it, it'll say that it's pseudoscience. But none of us agree with that, right? I mean, I guess some people that are watching this think that I'm a psychopath and that I'm crazy and da 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 da. But I mean, you know, there are some people that when the medical industry started taking shape, they would, it's a lot of people that would consider that to be pseudoscience. Oh wow, you're gonna cut somebody open and you're gonna just you just gonna do that? You're just gonna cut that person open and you're gonna do what again? You're gonna do surgery on them. Oh wow. So, that probably at some point was pseudoscience. You know what I'm saying? But as far as like spiritual gifts and stuff, y'all know that I don't agree with that. You should know by now. Okay. But anyway, so during this healing process that I'm going through, because I can promise y'all that uh yeah, I've been through some brain damaging experiences, especially in the past 5 years. And so this is the reason why I'm shying away from social media, because I've got to heal. I've got to heal my mind, clear it out, heal it. And so a lot of y'all, I'm making suggestions that y'all do that too. Um, because you just can't trust everybody, you know? And then you have to protect yourself from that kind of destruction. You can wear protective headgear and things of that nature, but I think mainly and primarily a lot of your protection is gonna, like, especially protection of your head. You really have to protect your head and you really have to protect your heart these days, because both are connected by the brain. Your heart connects to your mind through the brain stem. So I had an experience in 2000 and mm, it was the year that concert happened, where those people just was dropping dead at the concert. That was the year, because I remember it was around that time and it freaked me out seeing that. I was like, wow. Um I don't know why I can't even think of the artist's name, but it was that concert with the big mouth open. Y'all remember that? And I remember having an experience to where I was sitting there and I was listening to something on YouTube that I should have been listening to. But since I had gotten in the habit of listening to it, I was listening to it. And all of a sudden, felt like my brain was shaking. Just, oh God, it was a weird experience. It was just something wasn't right with that. Just something wasn't right with it, right? So what I did immediately was I turned it off and I started listening to some brain healing frequencies. However, frequencies are good. They are. But I don't think that you should necessarily rely on them alone. I think the herbs, I think the actual healing work is required for that. Because, let's face it, if somebody needs to heal certain areas of the brain, I would not I would want it healed as soon as possible. So I would do everything that I can to make sure that it's healed. Um, and then people will think, well, let me go get on a medication. But that could be even more damaging. And then people think, well, it's all about what I eat, and what you eat is important. Yeah. And so pretty much, I mean, especially with the prevalence of mm, people doing a lot of mm, people are out there on an agenda to systematically destroy your mind. And I want to warn the spiritual community about that. Okay, you'd be shocked at what you can do with a skull candle. You'd be shocked. So it's important to protect yourself from that, you know? Very, very important. And it's very, very important for y'all to like steer clear of a lot of these so-called groups of people that are just doing a bunch of craziness, because that's damaging to the mind. You know what I mean? But those people more than likely are not shamans. I can imagine. Well, if I actually had like a community of people on here, they would be very peaceful shaman types. They wouldn't be, you know, y'all know what I'm talking about. They wouldn't be that. They would not near about be that. So, and by the way, if you're in my Venus healing group, that's one of the things that we are working on, is healing your brain. So I've been getting a lot of positive feedback from that group, and it's because my spirits are healing people's brains in that group, because all of that stuff is not conducive to nature. Okay, especially when it comes to you women. When you look at early women, the early women in our society, they were not weak and codependent and frail. Those women had to go out and hunt and gather. Okay, they didn't always have a husband. Early woman didn't have, I mean, that was before marriages were even a concept. And this is probably the place that you want to go back to when it goes to when it comes to your survival. So if you are in my group and you have a past life as a hunting and gathering woman, you're going to be strengthened to survive this, because it's it's death, it's destruction, what we're dealing with out here, which makes no sense in a world with modern this technology. And you would think that it would be better, but instead people are more ruthless than ever. Okay, so just keep that in mind if you have not joined my group. And some of you guys, if you have a significant amount of damage to the brain, then you may want to do one-on-one work with me. But especially if you are a certain age and you've been going through certain things for years. Okay, mainly and primarily abusive relationships, to where the person is always abusing you, demeaning you, and disempowering you. When a person is doing that, they are factually damaging your mind. Okay. And that's not the play. It isn't. That ain't it. That's not what the ancestors want. And they not playing. They're not doing it. They not, y'all. They not doing it. They like That's why they want to try to get rid of the ancestors and stuff. You know what I'm saying? They're like, what is this? How is this person going to survive? You demeaning a person, trying to weaken them, trying to do damage to them on purpose. So that's why you see a lot of women that they just prefer to be single. This has been going on for years because you'll have a better chance of surviving without some abusive person, whether or not you're a man or a woman. I mean, I'm a woman, so of course I'm gonna be more so geared towards the woman, but statistically women are abused more. Statistically, they can claim that a lot that it's equally men that get abused, but and that the men just don't want to say anything because it would be an embarrassment. But I don't agree with that. I don't, you know, at all. I don't agree with that. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much what I wanted to tell you. So it's good news, but I had to come on here and I am calling out a lot of these people that are claiming that they're so spiritual, and they'll say, "Oh, I meditated," and it's like, you did, because it seems like that you always have a lot of like, always, like, especially when you're the bringer of these things that the rest of us, we know that you can't really manifest with that. It's not an organic manifestation. In fact, when I do crowns of success workings, that's exactly what's happening. Is your brain is being healed so that you can manifest that. And you can't just go and say, well, Jamila, I want you to heal. I want you to do a crown of success for me and heal my brain, and then go and do the same thing right away that damaged your brain. It's a lot of things that people are doing that is causing brain damage. And that's why your spiritual gifts are the way that they are. They're dormant, you know? So, you know, be careful, because your initiation, mm-mm. I mean, I know that different cultures have different stuff that they doing. Like, different cultures. Like, I was looking at a video of an African village, and They are those people over there always fascinate me. But I saw this video. It was a ritual that the people in that village would do. And what the women would do is they would all line up in a circle, and the men would beat them across the chest with these sticks to prove who was worthy of having a husband. Uh, yeah, no, I wouldn't be participating in that. But you know what I'm saying? I'd be like, oh, I'm just going to be single. No, I'm not doing that ritual. Mm-mm. But it was still pretty fascinating, seeing stuff like that because different people, different strokes for different folks, huh? I'm gonna try that. That video is actually up on YouTube. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. I'll try to find it, like a like a mating ritual or something. And the woman that could take the worst beating, she was worthy of a husband. And when you look at America and us descendants, because we're not African, we're not. I'm definitely not African. You can label me as African American if you want. I don't mind. But I would say I'm more so biracial, seriously. But, when you look at America, that's like a totally different culture. That's horrible to an American woman. They do what again? If I were African, that would be a tradition in Africa that I would reject. I wouldn't want nothing to do with that. I would run away from the village. They would never see me again. Mm-mm. Crazy. So, not I, but you'll see a lot of American people, especially when it comes to Black American males, and they'll say, oh, you Black women over in America, y'all are colonized. Is that what they call it? You're colonized, and you've allowed this white man to turn you away from the abuses that I'm supposed to do to you because I'm supposed to abuse you, and you're supposed to take it to prove your love to me. And so they'll say that Black women in America are watered down, because we don't want to participate in sadistic mating rituals with our counterparts. No, thank you. No, thank you. No, I'm not going to do that. No, can do, hon. You can keep that to yourself. Okay, I was born in America for a reason. And I don't want to go over there. I don't. There's a lot of people they like, I'd like to visit Africa. So would I. But if I was to walk up on some stuff like that, I'd be scared. That would definitely unlock a new fear in me. Mm-mm. They had some shows on Netflix, y'all, that was really interesting. Um, about Nigeria. Like I would never go there to visit, but it's interesting. It is very interesting. They have a lot of Nigerian movies on Netflix and stuff. Have y'all checked that out? Tripped on that? Oh goodness. Oh, shout out to my Nigerian people. I love y'all, but no, 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 no. I am an American. Okay. Yeah. So, they say that some of the, they say that, how it's an assumption made that the black people in America, that, we all came over here on the slave boat, and that's not true either. You know, that's definitely not true. We was, black people was always in America. There was always black people in America, you know? So, and I don't, I try not to even think about that, because we have to look at what's happening in modern times. And it's so much to think about that to me, it's pointless. I mean, it can make interesting conversation, but it's just pointless, because we got to look at the here and the now. And I think that if we're going to go back to the past, I think that it's important for every race and creed to go way back, like not just that. Like it's like people stop, like when looking at the past and past life. Why do people get stuck on slavery? Y'all notice that? You know that there's more than likely past lives that you had that go further back than that. Did you ever think about going further back? Y'all ever trip on that? How people always get stuck on slavery. And then they wonder why they feel the way that they feel. You got to go way, way back. Go back to the 1600s, go back to the 1700s and look at your past self. Mm-mm. You know, you know. So, anywho, be careful out there, guys. Trauma and drama is not being initiated. And while you are learning things that, if it were not for like half of that stuff, just like in school, you're not going to need, because, where spirit wants you to be is at a place of peace and harmony and in communion with nature. That's where spirit wants you to be. Okay. And you're not going to need those things. I mean, even though you know that you have it, but I feel like it's not even, it's necessary defense mechanisms for unnecessary evil. You know what I mean? Oh, okay, y'all. I done got kind of sleepy. So I'm going to get off of here. I hope that this conversation, this little TED talk, helped some of y'all kind of understand. You know what I'm saying? Hmm. All right, y'all. I got to go. I gotta go because I done got kind of sleepy. And I can't necessarily just fall asleep. I gotta sage every time I go live, y'all. I sage every time I go live. Well, I can't say that I've been exactly disciplined at that. Let me be honest. No, I have not necessarily been disciplined, but from here on out, I will be definitely throwing caution to the wind. And every time I come on here and I go live, I'm gonna sage with either my sage sticks or my Palo sticks. It's just the way that it has to be. Okay. Because when you come on the internet, especially if you, even if you're taking a picture, a photograph, but especially if you live, you're opening yourself up to those energies that are on the internet, to all sorts of energies and nasty stuff that you may not want or need. So it is very important to grab your Palo stick or your sage, or your sage, not stage, incense stick, Palo stick, sage stick, and, you know, smoke it out. Smoke it out, work it out. Get rid of it. Okay, whatever that shouldn't be there, whatever done tried to come in, whatever done tried to reach you, get rid of it. Okay. All right, y'all. Have a blessed Sunday. My reading special is still going on if you guys want to take advantage of that. Again, a reminder to join my group. This is one other reason why you guys have been asking, why am I not manifesting? Why is this happening? It's because your brain is damaged. That's why. Okay. So, anywho, y'all have a good one, okay? Okay, bye bye.